Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. Amma ba'd, we continue from page 16. We are up to the second qaida. It's not written there, but it's all under the main qaida, la darar wa la dirar. So you might want to write that in, because it's not written there for some reason. All of these that we're going to speak about tonight, inshallah azza wa jal, fall under one of the main qawaid al-kubra, la darar wa la dirar. La darar wa la dirar, the translation is a little bit tricky because of the khilaf in the understanding of what la darar wa la dirar means. Firstly, it comes from a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said alayhi salatu la darar wa la dirar. And this is one of the major rules of fiqh. La darar means that you do not do any harm to others. You do not do any harm. Wa la dirar. Dirar, this is where the majority of the difference of opinion is. But all of it goes back to also, you don't do anything that brings about harm. Or you don't, if someone does harm to you, you don't do the same or a worse harm back to them. Okay, so all of it goes back to no harm done, no harm caused. All of it is about not doing harm. The translation goes, meaning when a mukallaf, this is incorrect. Mukallif is wrong. Mukallaf is how the transliteration should be. Mukallaf is the person who is obliged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a mukallaf, a sane, mature Muslim who is responsible for carrying out Islamic duties, is compelled to carry out a prohibition because he fears some kind of harm on himself if he does not do it, then such a matter becomes legal, mubah, for him due to the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. And he has not laid upon you in religion any hardship. And he's saying, the Most High, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah intends for you ease and He does not want to make things difficult for you. And he's saying, the Most High, فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. He has forbidden you only dead animals and blood, and the flesh of swine, and that which is slaughtered as sacrifice for others than Allah. This is the part that we want. But if one of you is forced by necessity, without willful disobedience or transgressing due to limits, then there is no sin on him. Without transgressing due limits, then there is no sin on him. We go back to the beginning and we explain before we move on, inshallah azza wa jal. La darar wa la dirar, all of it goes back down to there being no harm. There being no harm, all of this that we're going to move forward with, inshallah azza wa jal, is going to centralize around this particular principle about you not causing any harm, and if there is harm, for that harm to be removed, which is another one of the rules, ad-darar yuzal. This is from the branch rules of this rule, ad-darar yuzal. If there is harm, then it is to be removed, whether that is upon yourself or it has to do with others, as we'll explain inshallah. The mukallaf, there are three main conditions for a person to be mukallaf, and he holds responsible. Number one, that he's a Muslim. Number two, that he's reached the age of puberty. Number three, that he's sane. These three conditions in the majority of acts of worship need to be there in order for a person to be mukallaf. Mukallaf, if you are held responsible, meaning if you don't do it, you're sinned. Okay, you're sinning. If a person is, for example, a young boy is 5 years old, if he doesn't pray, is he punished? No. Why? Because he's not mukallaf. Simple. Okay, he's not mukallaf. If a young boy swore, is he held responsible? No. Okay, this is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In matters of dunya, so we don't misunderstand taklif. In matters of dunya, is he responsible to fix something if he wrecks it? A young boy threw a ball and it broke a window. Or he got a baseball on purpose and he breaks someone's window. Does he get sinned against? Let's say he's 5 years old. Does he get any sins? But does he have to fix the person's window? Of course, he has to fix the person's window. Come on, his guardian. No, but he has to fix the window. Or the people responsible have to fix the window. Some people, they misunderstand that a person, even if he's not mukallaf, yes, he doesn't, even if he's not mukallaf, that he doesn't get sins, but he's still responsible for anything that he wrecks from the matters of dunya. Tayyib. I've had a parent tell me their daughter was dressed inappropriately, a young girl, and I said, don't dress your daughter like this. They said, but she's not mukallafa, like she's not holds responsible yet. What do you reply back?
Your responsibility.
You as a parent, Jazakallah khairan, you as a parent are responsible for their good upbringing. Like when you're commanded to tell your children to pray at 7 years old. And you're commanded to advise them and to tell them to pray, to get them used to the salawat. So even though it's not an obligation on them yet, but the responsibility is on you. Just like, okay, they're not mukallafin yet, but you also have the obligation to raise them properly. You have to teach them to use nice words, to respect their elders, to not steal, to any halal, etc. Even if it's not an obligation on them and they don't get sinned against because they don't know any better, but you as an adult have the responsibility to raise them well, and that includes their speech and their dress and the like. There's one clear example, there's more, but there's one clear one where maturity, hitting the age of puberty, is not a condition for the act of worship to be an obligation. So the general rule is that you have to be Muslim, you have to be of age and hit the age of puberty, and you have to be sane when it comes to that act of worship becoming an obligation on you, like the salah. And a person who's underage doesn't have to pray as an obligation, and the person who is mentally not there, okay, as well, they don't have to pray if they're insane. It's not an obligation on them. Give me an act of worship, a clear example of where even if they're insane or they're not of the age of puberty, the obligation is still still an obligation upon them.
If they're insane,
even if they're insane, or they're under the age of puberty, the act of worship is still an obligation on them. Zakat, very good. Zakat. Why? Because the obligation is linked to the money. It's not linked to them as an individual. So if they're young children, but their parents put money away from them, let's say they've got like a bank account for them where they save up money until they get to a certain age. So they have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in their bank account. The parents, the guardians, they're responsible to pay zakat on that money, even if they're not of age yet. Or let's say a parent passed away and his children inherited from him. So one of the brothers or one of the sisters, they're insane. Now, but there's still money away from them, 50, 60,000, whatever it may be. The guardians of that person have to pay zakat on their behalf from that money. Okay? So this is one of the obligations that's linked to the money. It's not linked to the individual themselves. As long as they're Muslims, then they have to give that amount. And a lot of parents make this mistake when they're saving money for their children and they don't pay zakat on their behalf.
Doesn't the obligation fall on the parents then?
Of course. That's what I'm saying. It's not the obligation is still there. They don't get sinned because they don't know. But let's say when they get older, let's say the young child, when he gets older and he knows that his parents never paid zakat on his behalf, what happens? He has to pay the zakat for those years. So that's why it's on his neck. We'll go through the three conditions for a person to be mukallaf. This is the general rule. Okay? Sane means he's able to determine right from wrong. Some people, they do have mental issues. Okay? There are mental issues there. But as long as they can differentiate between right and wrong, then the obligation is upon them. So if a person has got anger issues, or a person who's got bad anxiety, or a person who's got bad depression, they're still mukallafun. Okay? If they still know that the prayer is an obligation, they understand that, they comprehend salah is an obligation. You do it, you get rewarded. You don't do it, then you're sinning. Then they're mukallafun in that regard. Insane means a person does not understand, does not comprehend, is not there. He is not there. And this is either due to a mental disability, where they can't comprehend. And some people, subhanallah, they're not there. They have they use terms like retard, etc. This is the original term, the linguistic term, not the way that we use it now in a derogatory way. Naam, where they can't understand. Or it could be in a physical state. Let's say a person's in a coma. A person's in a coma for 1 month. He wakes up from his coma. Does he have to make up a month's worth of prayers? Because he wasn't sane, the obligation doesn't fall on him. Okay? Questions at the end. Allah will write the questions down and then ask at the end, inshallah. If it's a small amount, a person was knocked out for 1 day, okay, and he wakes up and it's easy to make up the prayers, make up. But if it's a longer time, it becomes hard, they don't have to make up the prayers. Mature means they reach the age of puberty. There are 3 signs for a male and a female, and 1 sign for a female. What are the 3 signs of age of puberty for both male and female? Number 1 is a wet dream. Number 2, there's pubic hair. Number 3, they reach to the age of 15. Okay, they reach the age of 15. And for the female, menses. جيد. Mature and the Muslim. طبعا they're Muslim. Are the non-Muslims held accountable on the day of judgment for not carrying out the acts of worship?
Bullshit. The non-Muslim.
The non-Muslim, does he get punished? Does a woman, for example, she's a kafira. She dies upon kufr. On the day of judgment, when she's resurrected, she gets punished obviously for her kufr. But does she also get punished because she didn't wear hijab, for example? Put your hand up if you say yes. They also get judged for that. Put your hand up if you say no.
Is there a third option for Allah Alam?
The good thing is that if you say Allahu Alam, you're always right.
Yeah, that's it.
Actually, in my exams, wallah, for uni, I don't know if they marked me right or wrong. But there was a question, khalas, I had absolutely no idea. Okay? So I just wrote Allahu Alam, in the hope that I'll get at least 1 mark.
Maybe get a half for it.
Alhamdulillah. طيب. There is khilaf, but Allahu Alam, the stronger is that they will be punished and held accountable in the hereafter, also for the obligations that they did not fulfill in this dunya. So let's say we're living under Sharia, and this is one thing that a lot of Muslims and non-Muslims don't know about Sharia. Let's say we're living under Sharia. In this dunya, can they drink alcohol and eat pork even in Khilafah?
Yes.
Yes, that which is halal in their religion, they're allowed to do it even under an Islamic state. Okay, and Islamic state, not yani for Asia, yani we're just making sure. طيب. They're allowed to, under Sharia law, that which is allowed in their religion, like drinking alcohol, they're allowed to do it even in an Islamic state. But are they held accountable in the hereafter for it? Yes. Just like, again, if a child, for example, they do something wrong, then they are not held responsible, but their parents are. Okay? The obligation still stands. And if that child, when he's older, if he knows, he has to rectify it. If he doesn't, then he's punished for it, like the zakat. Now, well, he's held accountable, I should say. Similarly, those in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed them to do by their religion what is allowed. But are they held accountable because they didn't follow Islam and the rulings of Islam in the hereafter? Yes. Because they needed to become Muslim and implement the Sharia. They even evidence. لم نكن من المصلين ولم نكن نطعم المسكين وكنا نخوض مع الخائضين إلى آخره. Okay? When they're asked in the hellfire, what put you in the hellfire? They will say that we weren't from the ones that prayed and we didn't believe in the hereafter, etc. طيب, the fact that they said that we weren't from the ones that prayed and they didn't believe in the hellfire, not believing in the hellfire is already kufr. So that would have been enough. But because they added all of these other things, it shows that they were held accountable also for not fulfilling the obligations that the Sharia came with. If a person mukallaf is compelled to carry out a prohibition because he fears some kind of harm on himself, if he does not do so, then such a matter becomes legal, mubah for him. Due to the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. We did not, we went back for those, we went back to page 16. He has not laid upon you in the religion any hardship. This haraj, diq, hardship, usr, again, all of these words, these become now Shar'i terms. The Shar'i terms, we need to understand what's that hardship speaking about. When Allah says He didn't place any hardship upon you, every act of worship has some hardship in it. So the hardship that comes naturally with the act of worship, this taban, no one can say, oh, Salah is hard for me to wake up for Fajr, so I'm not going to wake up. This is talking about a hardship which Sharia did not intend. Okay, a hardship that the Sharia did not intend. As an example, okay, clear example. Now, physically, financially, a person can't get to Hajj. He doesn't have to perform Hajj. Can a person say, Akhi, you have to feed, and he start walking to Hajj, and people will feed you along the way? This is a hardship above and beyond. And so everyone knows that that hardship now is a person's excuse from. Now, people like to use these words, haraj, usr, these types of words like hardship, in a sense that anything that's any hardship on you, it becomes halal for you to do. And like common examples that you get when it comes to this is, for example, hijab, like let's say Australia, hijab at the beach and pools and Mawarif Shore. So if the hijab comes up Okay, the shin start to show, the forearm start to show, the neck show, it's hot or haram, other people are doing it, and it's hard for her not to do it. So they make an excuse. No, this is not the type of excuse that's intended here. Obviously, hijab is going to require some patience. That's without doubt. Living in an environment that we live in is going to require some patience. That's without doubt. But to use that natural hardship that the Sharia came with to justify haram, this is not allowed. Okay? Or for example, some people say, Ya'ami ad-din yusr. Yani let's say there's a wedding and there's music and sometimes alcohol and the like, and dancing and ikhtilat, intermingling. And you say, this is haram. They say, ad-din yusr. The deen is easy. The deen is easy in and of itself. The deen is easy in and of itself. So the deen has made itself easy. There's that natural hardship. Let's say making wudu. There's that natural hardship of, yes, it's going to require some effort for you to get up and to make wudu. Let's say in winter, it's cold for you to go make wudu. It's hardship, but it's accepted hardship. Can you get straight to tayammum? Of course not. Let's say one morning it's freezing, electricity is cut off. And you honestly believe that if you or someone in your family makes wudu with that cold water, you're going to get sick. That's your honest belief. If you use that freezing cold water because there's nowhere to heat it up, you're going to get sick. Then can you make tayammum?
Yes.
Yes. Why?
Because from you know that
It's a hardship. It's a hardship above what the Sharia intended. It's a hardship above what the Sharia intended. You can go do tayammum. If a person, let's say he's got a very bad back, okay, and he can't stand up for long at all. Or let's say he's got a broken leg, okay, he can't stand up at all. He can stand up and he just move from position to position. But to stay standing up, it causes a lot of hardship and pain in his leg. So standing up for prayer naturally, again, there's some effort that is required for you to stand up and pray. There's some effort required. It's a natural hardship. A person with a broken leg, where if he stands up, he feels like a throbbing pain in his leg and it's very hard for him to control. He can, but it's very hard. Can that person sit down and pray? Yes. Why? Because it's a hardship that the Sharia did not intend. That natural standing up, like now you pray Salat al-Maghrib, there is some effort required for you to stand up behind and pray behind the Imam. There's that natural hardship. But if a person's got a broken leg and every time he stands up for more than a few seconds, there's immense pain in his leg, then that person is allowed to sit down. Okay, because it's a hardship above what the Sharia wanted. So if there's a hardship, it's allowed to be removed and it goes into a matter of mubah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want hardship upon us. And the next ayah, all of them are very similar ayat. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah intends for you ease and He does not want to make things difficult to you. Again, these words ease and hardship, they take the Shar'i meaning, not just the linguistic meaning, because in all of the acts of worship, there's going to be some level of difficulty. The next verse we're not going to speak much about, because it's going to come with us in the next chapter or two, because this verse becomes very important to understand how much ease does the Sharia allow in these times of hardship. The paragraph after, there are innumerable scenarios in which this maxim applies, such as eating carrion. What's carrion? Carrots? That's what I'm saying. Dead meat, dead meat, maita. Okay? Dead meat, maita means anything which is meant to be slaughtered Islamically and it's not. So let's say you have a sheep and it got hit by a car. Okay? And it's dead. The person can't say, look, you know what, khalas, it's dead, let's take it and do a barbecue out of it. La. Okay, it's not slaughtered Islamically. It's maita, you're not allowed to use it. It can be given to dogs or the like, but you can't eat it as a Muslim. Naam. Or things that are not allowed to be eaten, like, for example, dogs themselves. Okay, their meat is considered maita. Even if someone says Bismillah and slaughtered it, it never becomes halal because it's najis. There are innumerable scenarios in which this maxim applies, such as eating carrion, drinking impure water, and other things, all of which are permitted in times of necessity. In times of necessity. So if a person needed to eat it, is he allowed? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Okay? Needed to eat it, then it's allowed. Another example is multiple and consecutive movements in prayer. This does not nullify the prayer. Let's say a person is praying and they see, for example, a spider walking, okay, and it's going to go towards their children. So they take 2-3 steps to kill the spider and they continue praying. Are they allowed? Yes, because there's a need for it to happen. This does not nullify the prayer. Likewise, the prohibited matters during al-ihram If the pilgrim is compelled to do a prohibited action, then it is permitted, but he is required to offer an expiation. Like if you're in ihram, you're not meant to cut your hair. Okay, this is towards the end. But let's say a person, like what happened with one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they had lice, and the lice was affecting them. So they had to shave their head early. They shaved their head early, but then they have to do a fidyah. So it's not allowed, but because of need, it became allowed. Likewise, the marriage between a free man and a slave girl is not permissible, except in the case when committing a sin is feared and self-restraint is unachievable. This is a matter in fiqh. A free man is allowed to own a female slave, but he's not allowed to marry a female slave unless there's a need. And he can't afford to get married to a free woman, and he fears that he's going to commit zina, then he's allowed to marry a Muslim female slave. But the rules are strict regarding it. Likewise, whoever is compelled to take the wealth of another, such as in the form of food or otherwise, it is permissible to take without the permission or agreement of its owner, except in the case when it would harm its owner. If a person, for example, you're walking and you start choking, like you're walking past a restaurant or a cafe, you start choking, and so you need water, and you needed to grab, Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, you get the hasanat for your reward, like we spoke about last week. Hey, that's actually reminded me. See, you reminded me I need to finish off intention from last week. If a person's walking and they start choking, and so he just grabs the bottle of water of the person that's there and he starts drinking it, is that allowed, yes or no? But it's allowed. Even though it's his property, you're not allowed to take his property except with his permission. But because you needed to, then you are allowed. Okay, and then you need to obviously pay back that person for what you used of their right. So let's say two people, you started choking and he started choking at the same time. Can he take his water bottle and he dies? No. Okay, and we'll speak about that. That's what it means. We're not causing them harm. We'll speak about that, inshallah, again in the rules at the end. Can you take the wealth of the kafir?
A lot of people say yes.
This is because something harmful cannot be removed by another thing which is harmful, and we find the range of matters which, when one is compelled to do, are legalized. In relation to this maxim, there is a statement of the fuqaha often repeated: there is no prohibition in the event of necessity or obligation in the absence of capability. And at the end, at the bottom, لا محرم مع اضطرار ولا واجب مع عدم اقتدار. There is nothing becomes haram. This is the general rule. Nothing is haram when there is a need. ولا واجب مع عدم اقتدار. And there is nothing is an obligation if you are unable to do it. Get the general rule. The next two principles will make it clearer, inshallah, and then we'll mention some specific examples at the end, inshallah. The next rule, and all of them they're connected. Al-hajat tuzilu al-makruhat. Need eliminates dislikes. The first one was ad-darar la darar wa la dirar, and the principle that we went through was ad-darurat tubihu al-mahdhurat. The principle that we went through was ad-darurat tubihu al-mahdhurat. The needs make the prohibitions acceptable. The needs make the prohibitions acceptable. Another clear example. Give me some clear examples of needs making from our time that make prohibitions acceptable. Clear examples, day-to-day examples. Show up to time. Yallah. Needs make anything in our time that we do normally. Okay, compulsory third party. A person that's the opinion that the insurance is haram. You need to register your car. Okay, without registering third party, you can't register your car. So you go and get that insurance. Ad-darurat tubihu al-mahdhurat. Good. What else? Hex for the person who can't afford to pay his uni fees up front because there's some interest involved in the hex, but he won't be able to get a job or good education without it. So, ad-darurat tubihu al-mahdhurat. Even though both of these are more hajat, okay? They fall under al-hajiyat more than they fall under ad-darurat, but Allahu alam, according to the stronger opinion, the hajiyat also tubihu al-mahdhurat. Okay, but there is difference of opinion. What else? Give me some other examples. Yallah. Because you're not meant to kill animals, yani? Animal activists. These are from al-fawasiq. So, Abdurrahman, you can kill them normally for other reasons. Allah.
Even dealing with the banks.
Okay, very good. Dealing with the banks. Okay, because they're a riba institute. So the asl is that you don't keep your money with them. That's the actual asl, the principle, is that you don't keep your money with them. But because if you don't have a bank account, you can't get paid. For example, in the 99.9 repeater of the companies in the world, you won't be able to get paid. So you need to have a bank account. Okay, so that need, you have your your money in the bank, no issue, inshallah, part of that rule. But things like, if you, for example, a person, he has to go to the hospital, and the nurse, for example, touching him. Okay, if there's no male nurses, the females are the one that need to touch the person, etc., then you do it. Or you need to go to the doctor, you need to show your awrah. Okay, you do it. You're not allowed to show your awrah. Or the female, if she needs to go to, she had to go to a doctor or a surgeon, and there was only a male at that time, and he needed to see any part of her awrah where normally it wouldn't be allowed, then she's allowed to show him. Okay, these are al-darurat tubihu al-mahdhurat. And also falls under that rule is al-hajiyat, that which is need, okay, but it's not a necessity. Even again, as I mentioned, there is, necessity not need, even though there's difference of opinion. This is al-hajiyat tubihu al-hajat tuzilu al-makruhat. Needs eliminate dislikes. That is, when there is a need to carry a disliked matter, then it's being disliked, makruh is lifted. And any matter which is disliked to leave is being disliked, it's being disliked is lifted if there is a need to leave it. This is based on the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ, the same ayah. And the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ, same ayah. And the hadith, إِنَّ الدِّينَ يُسْرٌ, the religion is easy. There are numerous scenarios in which this principle applies to, such as the types of water which are disliked to use, like water whose state is altered without mixing with other liquids, or used water for a recommendable act of purification, etc. When there is a need to use such types of water, then they are not disliked. Likewise, when there is a need for using disliked vessels or clothes, they are no longer disliked. And it is disliked to enter a restroom with anything which contains the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jalla without need. It is disliked to look around during the prayer, or to spread out the arms during prostration, or make slight movements, etc., except for need. Meaning, that which is makruh. Remember, we went through the 5 ahkam, or the 5 rules of the Sharia last week. What were they, Abdul Rahman? The 5 rules of the Sharia. No. The 5 rules of Sharia. Fard.
Oh, sorry.
Sunnah, mustahab, mubah, makruh, and haram. Jayyid. Okay? Which ones are halal and which ones are haram? All of them except the haram are halal. Okay? So the makruh, the mubah, the mustahab, and the fard, all of these are halal. It is the one that's haram, that's the only one that's haram. طيب. When it comes to that which is makruh, it's better to leave it. It's better to leave it. So a person who wants to be more religious is want to leave these matters. But when there's a need, it's not even makruh anymore in that right. So here it doesn't change the ruling from haram to halal like the first one. The first one, ad-darurat tubihu al-mahdhurat, this changes haram to halal. Here we're not changing haram to halal. Here we're leaving halal as halal. But instead of it being makruh, it now becomes mubah for this person. An example of in our times in which we might see a lot, let's say a person is making wudu, and the mustahab is for him to use his right hand to put the water in, and his left hand to take the water out. Let's say this person, he's got a fractured hand, that it's in a brace or it's in a cast, and he can't use his right hand to make wudu. So he has to use his left hand to put water in and to take out. That putting the water in, it's makruh with your left hand. But the fact that now he can't use his right hand, then it removes the karahiyah altogether. The fact that it's makruh, it's gone altogether. So that's mubah in his right. Benefit, a need, and not a necessity. So the Shaykh, rahimahullah, is on the opinion that ad-darura, which is that if you don't have it, your life's pretty much going to become extremely difficult, or it's going to lead to death, and not a necessity. A haja, this is the Shaykh's opinion, rahimahullah, can be a cause for prohibition to be legalized when its prohibition is light, such as those things whose prohibition is due to what it leads to, rather than being prohibited in and of itself. For example, the lawfulness of wearing silk due to a medical condition, such as itching and inflammation. The Shaykh rahimahullah is saying that he's on the opinion that it's only a darura that leads to something becoming halal. If something is a haja, you got three categories when it comes to hardship. Or any matter falls under three categories. One is tahsini, the other one is haji, the last one is daruri. Tahsini means it's there to make your life easier. Okay, it's there to make your life easier, it's nicer. Let's say a person needs a car for work. You can get, I'm just going to give examples, okay? You can get a 1990 Toyota Hilux and it's fine, does the job, okay? Or you can get a 2007 Toyota Hilux, which is better. Or you can get a, mashallah, 2024 SR5 Rogue Vogue, tabarakallah, with all the bells and whistles, okay? The top one is tahsini. Okay, you don't need it, but a person likes to have it. The second one is maybe that which you get it and it's going to be reliable, it's going to be a day-to-day car. You can use it and it's going to be fine. The 1991, Allahu alam, you get it today, the gearbox goes tomorrow, the water pump goes the next day, the fuel pump the day after that, somehow the fuel ends up in the engine, khalas, you don't trust that car. Okay? If someone says, Sheikh, I need to go and I need a car for work, and I can't afford to get it cash, and I don't have anyone that will lend me the money in halal. Let's just use this as an example. I don't have anyone that will lend me the money in halal. So I need to go and buy a car. Okay, I need to go and buy a car. If we say to him, okay, you're allowed to go buy a car, and it will be clear even in the next rule. If we said to go buy a car, he can't say, you know what, I'm going to get to buy a 2024 Toyota SR5 with all the bells and whistles. Why? Because I told the Sheikh I need a car and he said, yeah, you can go get a car. Okay? It's not from there. The bottom one, if we say to him, get that, it's not going to fulfill the job. So out of need, okay, he actually needs it. If he doesn't have it, he can't work. He can go and get, for example, the 2007 one. If that's going to be the minimum that fulfills the requirement. I will explain, inshallah, in more detail coming up. So that you understand the difference between need and necessity. Need is the darura. Need is darura. The necessity is the haja.
So it's enough for your hajj.
Yes. La, and that's for darura. We'll explain the next one, inshallah.
Shaykhan, need and necessity interchangeable?
In the English language, yeah, but if you use it in the proper, that's why Arabic is much better. In the Arabic, no. Even if you look at the difference between need and necessity, like if you just do a quick Google search, will show you that need is that which if you don't have, your life is going to be very hard. Whereas necessity is you can live without. It's something that you really want, but you can live without. An example of that is, let's say, silk. Okay, silk, taban, for men is haram. Let's say a person has a very bad rash on his left arm, and so he wants to wear silk. Okay, because that's going to be the only material that eases that rash. Is he allowed to go get, mashallah, a nice Versace silk top to bottom shirt? La, taban la. Where is he allowed to wear the silk? On the where the part of his rash is on his body. His left sleeve, that would be the only part. Even the bottom of the left sleeve, exactly where the rash is, that and the place that he needs around it, so it doesn't harm him. That's where he's allowed to get a silk on. As for the rest of his body, then the prohibition remains. Okay, the prohibition remains. You have to get a custom made. If you go to Arab countries, you actually find this a lot. Now, likewise, the lawfulness of buying a date palm trees, al-araya, for ripe dates and by estimation, due to necessity. Anyone study fiqh in mu'amalat? Fiqh of transactions? There's something called araya. Araya is when you take dried dates and you swap them for fresh dates. What's the difference? Who knows anything about dates?
Weight.
Fresh one.
Yeah, what's the difference between fresh and dry, Yani?
Weight changes, no?
Yeah, but we'll get before that.
It's nicer, the fresh one. The other one's dry.
What's the difference between fresh and dry?
They're
They're still very moist. They have all the moisture in them. So when we get dates, we get dried dates. When they pick them up off the palm tree straight away, they've got a lot of water in them. That's what, balah. That's why they need to have it out to dry. And then we get what we get after. So Shar'an, you're not allowed to swap these two. This is the asal. Shar'an, you're not allowed to swap these two. Why? Because because it becomes a form of riba. Because you are swapping that which is, the water is going to go from it for that which is already dry. So if I sold you 1 kilo of this for 1 kilo of that, really what ends up becoming, this will end up, for example, 600, 800, 700 grams, and this is still a kilo. So the same thing, if I'm doing something that's weighed like rice, I can't give you 2 kilos of rice and you give me 2 kilos of, or 1 kilo back. That's riba, like gold. Okay, I can't give you 2 kilos of gold and you give me 1 kilo of gold. What's meant to happen? The one who wants to give more goes, sell your 2 kilos and then you go buy it. Okay, one of the exceptions for that rule is with these dates, al-araya, due to the need of it, but no one deals with dates here for it's hard to understand. The lawfulness, another example, the lawfulness of postponing a commercial exchange between two traders if one of the articles being weighed is currency. Again, these are hard examples for a person to understand. Simple things where a need becomes haram, like the examples that we gave here. Okay, insurance and hex. Okay, these are from the things for which are fall under the haji, but they still, in the rule that we said, Allahu Alam is a stronger opinion, allow the haram to become halal. We'll give the third rule and then we'll explain a little bit more on these three principles. The next one, الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. This is very important. الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. A necessity is measured by its extent. That is, when a prohibition is legalized due to a necessity, it is not absolutely legitimate, but rather it is bound by the extent of its necessity. If the necessity ends, abstaining from the prohibited matter is obligatory because it was legalized due to its necessity. And once it is no longer necessary, it returns to its original state of prohibition. This applies to carrion, yani the dead meat, being legalized due to necessity. It may be eaten according to the amount it takes to stay alive. Other examples include purification by tayammum and the purification of one who is perpetually in a state of impurity due to an illness or condition. They are bound by time due to them being forms of purification due to a necessity only. Likewise, compulsion in divorce initiated from the side of the husband, at-talaq or wife, al-khula', taking an oath, freeing a slave, or selling and renting admission, etc. Whatever these matters compel one to do are not applicable because he was compelled. If one is compelled to do any of the above, he must do so, but if he does any of the above without being compelled, then it is correctly applicable as he was not forced. For example, before we give the examples, الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. If a person had to go and take riba, let's say a person, the fatwa that the first house is allowed. I'm not saying first house is allowed, but I'm showing you how even that fatwa is implemented wrong. If a person was given a fatwa that you are allowed to get your first house on riba, how much riba does he take? Does he take it to buy a 3-story mansion with investment property next door and a holiday house on the beach, and possibly in the future he buys a land in Young? It's not allowed. You take what you need. If he needs a 3-bedroom home, when we say need, it's the norm. Okay, need based on the norm. Not wallah, you can't say, okay, if you got 3 kids, okay, you can live in a 1-bedroom flat. This is not the need. We're talking about need, the norm. Okay, of what is accepted with the people around you. Your need is, let's say, a 3-bedroom house. You borrow for a 3-bedroom house. If the house is acceptable, you don't say 3-bedroom house plus renovation. No, 3-bedroom house. Normal 3-bedroom house. You can live in it and it's acceptable. It's comfortable enough. That's all you're allowed to take. So if you only needed 600,000 from the bank, that's all you take. But if a person says, the sheikh gave me the fatwa, first house is halal. So he goes and gets, for example, 1.2 to build, buy a double-story duplex in Greenacre for some reason. He paid that much. Allah yadi. Okay? He goes and buys that for that much. Has he done الضرورة تقدر بقدرها? No. He's taken above what he needs. Okay? A person, he hit that sheep. Okay, let's say he's in the middle of nowhere and he's driving and he sees, wallah, there's a dead sheep on the ground. He's about to die. So he says, you know what, let me get sticks and what I learned in primary school, let me light a little fire and let me cook some of this sheep just so I can stay alive. As he's eating, he says, wallah, this is a hanjat, this is good. I don't know what he's been eating, but this meat is very good. So he says, instead of eating what I need to stay alive,
Made man,
Is there a silver brother driving a silver Camry here? Brother, did you silver Camry? A person, he found that meat. He's able to eat from it in order to stay alive. And if that means, for example, 250 grams, 250 grams. But he can't say, you know what, Allah, it was very nice, and he goes and says, I'm going to eat half the sheep before he goes right. No, it's not allowed. Same thing with, for example, alcohol. The common example is alcohol. He was walking past a restaurant, they were drinking alcohol at the front, he was choking, there was nothing else, grabbed the alcohol bottle, started to drink. He says, you know what, Allah, I repented 15 years ago, I haven't had this in a long time, let me keep on going. No. He uses what's necessary to stop choking. As soon as that's finished, the necessity stops. Example, tayammum. Okay? This is again a hypothetical. A person, 1 o'clock in the morning, all the electricity cuts out. And all the water cuts out. So he can't go to the shops to buy water because everything's closed. And he's got no water left. The only water he has in his fridge, he needs to drink. So he can do tayammum. As he's doing tayammum, he's done tayammum as he's praying. Let's say he's praying qiyam al-layl. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, is a religious brother. He's praying tahajjud. As he's praying, he made tayammum. The water comes back on. What ends up happening?
Keep praying.
He has to stop. Because his tayammum was only valid. Why? Because there was no water. As soon as water came back on, what happened to his tayammum? Gone. الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. The need is only done according to the need. As soon as that need is gone, خلاص. There's no need for it anymore. At the end, inshallah. The ones that ask during the lesson break the rules. Okay? Same thing when you get to the doctor, the examples that we gave before. When you get to the doctor, let's say you need to show him part of your aura. So let's say you, for example, as a man, you have a scar on your upper thigh. So you can wear shorts and you show him the upper thigh. Doesn't mean you can, go for gold. La. You can't go for gold. Okay? Or let's say a sister, she needs to show her arm to the doctor. She goes and she shows her arm. You don't take off your complete hijab. You do what's necessary for the need to be fulfilled. Some of the examples the Sheikh gave, if someone was compelled to do something, he's only allowed to do that which he was compelled to do. If one is compelled to utter a single pronouncement of divorce, but then he utters it more than once. Let's say a person put a gun to your head. You had a problem with your wife's family. So your brother-in-law comes over one day with a gun and he says, divorce my sister. So you're forced to divorce. So you say she's divorced. Does that divorce count?
Depends on the intention.
It doesn't count because you're mukrah. You're compelled, you're forced to do it. But let's say he says divorce my sister and you say she's divorced. And then after 2 minutes he says she's divorced again. And after 2 minutes later she said she's divorced again. What ended up happening? She's divorced. Why? Because all what was required was that once. Okay, he didn't tell you to say it. He said once. And you overdone it. Okay? Or he comes over, let's say you're married to 2 wives. His sister's named Khadija and the second wife is named Fatima. So you go and you put the gun, he says, divorce my wife. He goes, Khadija and Fatima are divorced. What ends up happening? The other one's gone, okay? The other one's gone because you transgressed the means of what was an obligation. All you needed to do, because you were forced, was to divorce, say that you divorced his sister. Why did you go and divorce the other one? The fact that you done that, you went and now have to make up. Remember, the niyyah doesn't count in divorce, remember. Another example the Shaykh Rahimahullah gives, one is compelled to divorce his wife, Hind, but he divorced his second wife, Fatima, and said, this is the example that we gave. Or one is compelled to sell his house, but he sells his slave instead. Okay, someone comes and says, let's just say his car instead of his slave, because we don't have slaves. A person put a gun to your head and said, sold me your car for $5,000. He says, Khalas, take my car and my house for $5,000. Can he ask for his house back? Like, Khalas, you gave your house up for free. That's your issue. You can get your car back, but not your house. Or one is compelled to admit the amount of a dirham, but he admits a dinar, cents and dollars. He says, instead of admitting to $1, he admitted to $10. For example, he was forced to have that extra. Now you have to pay for because you weren't forced. فَالضَّرُورَةُ تُقَدَّرُ بِقَدَرِهَا. The necessity is measured by its extent. You can't go beyond that. Some of the things to take as a summary, when something becomes an obligation to do, if something becomes extremely hard where a person can't do it anymore, then they don't need to do it. Okay, if something's too hard for a person to do, then they don't need to do it. And if there's a hardship where a person needs to do something, then even if it's haram, it becomes halal. This need is measured by the Sharia itself. It's not measured by whims and desires. That's why it takes a person of knowledge to go for these things, because you're making something which is haram, halal, or you're making something which is fard, not fard anymore. There needs a person of knowledge to decide this. If something does become halal, or it becomes haram, depending on the ruling, then it's only there, and you're only allowed to do it to the extent that it's necessary. You're not allowed to transgress beyond that. If you transgress beyond that, then you are held accountable, and you've either committed a major sin by continuing that which is you think was halal, but in essence it's haram because you went above, or you've stopped doing something which was an obligation, which is actually an obligation for you to do. Jayyid. Some additional matters regarding this rule. الضرر لا يزال بالضرر. Harm is not removed by harm. Harm is not removed. This is our notes, okay, that you write. Harm is not removed by harm. You have three scenarios when you're removing harm. Number one, you remove it with something worse than it. Let's say a person, he comes and he wants to fight you. Okay? So it's just a normal fight. You get, for example, a gun and you shoot him dead. Tayyib. He will come to fight you. If you pushed him away, or you said, I don't want to fight, or even if you hit him just to get away from it, that's possible. But you went above and beyond and he shot the person. He wasn't coming to kill you. He just wanted to have an argument. And you shot him. You removed his harm with a greater harm. That's not allowed. Yeah, but you went above and beyond.
You don't know his intentions.
Like Allah Yadik was saying, you know. Now a person comes and... Yo, mishkalji anta. I'm going to have argy with you after the lesson, inshallah.
I don't have my name. Don't worry.
If you remove a harm with the same harm, okay, not that example now. A person, he comes and he's swearing at you, okay? That same person comes to you now and he's just swearing at you. F this and F that and F this and F that. So you say, I want to get this guy away from me. So what do I start doing? I start saying F you and F this and F this and F that. Is that allowed? It's not allowed. Why? You're trying to remove his harm with the same harm. You're not allowed to remove harm with the same harm. That's not allowed. Okay? It doesn't work. An example is when the companions of the Prophet ﷺ wanted to stop the men from urinating in the masjid. So they were going to come. If they try to stop him as he's doing his business, he's going to spray in more places. So it's going to be worse. Or they wanted to attack him. Now you're stopping one harm with another harm. The same harm. Doesn't work. Okay? The third scenario is you remove the harm with a lesser harm. And that's allowed. You remove one harm with a lesser harm. This is allowed. Even if you don't remove it altogether, but a lesser harm is better than that harm. An example. A person comes, and this is, I'm not saying, again, it's not halal. I'm giving a rule of examples. A person comes and he's putting it on another person, saying you have to pay $1,000 a week protection. For this area, Habibi, you have to pay $1,000 a week protection. And you say, Ammi, listen, what you're doing is bad. Instead of $1,000, you shouldn't take anything. But instead of 1,000, have a bit of rahmah on the guy and take 300. It's still bad, it's still haram him taking that oppressingly. But you made it, instead of 1,000, you brought it down to 300. So you remove a greater harm with a lesser harm. Is that allowed? Yes, that's allowed. Okay? You didn't remove the problem, but you lessened the problem. And that's allowed in the Sharia. Okay? Because you're making the situation better. Another rule from these rules is الضرر يدفع بقدر الإمكان. Harm is fought as much as possible. So even if you can't remove the harm 100%, you still do your best to remove the harm as much as possible. And this is a much longer topic, but remove the harm as much as possible. It's not a condition that all of the harm is removed. Okay, even if, for example, da'wah, when you say the haram, like in Qara al-Munkar, you say the haram, you remove it as much as possible. even though you're never going to get rid of it altogether, but you do what you can. Another matter regarding the harms is يتحمل الضرر الأخص لدفع الضرر العام. The single or the smaller harm is to hold that harm for the benefit of the majority. The minority takes the responsibility for or holds that harm for the benefit of the majority. Example, let's say you're building a highway, because this happened in Australia. Let's say they're building a highway and they need, in order to build this highway, to cut through certain houses. So can the government force the people in those houses to sell their houses in order for them to build a road that's going to benefit everyone else? So let's say, you might have a few houses or some tens of houses that need to go in order for them to build this road that's going to benefit millions. Yes, it's allowed to be done. Even by force. Taban, they get paid because it's their house. They get paid, but it's allowed to be done. Because some people, they say, nah, this is my house and I don't want to give it up. Because there's a big benefit for the majority of people, even if it's going to harm a small number, then it's still allowed to be done. Let's say, okay, this happened with COVID. Let's say the vast majority of people, because this happened when people, especially at the beginning of COVID, when people were still praying shoulder to shoulder. So you had some people who, they were a little bit sick or they've got weak immune systems. They were saying, can't we pray apart? They want to pray apart, and they want everyone to pray apart because they have weak immune systems. We say, no, the benefit is in keeping everyone together, okay? Even if it means some people can't come to the masjid, so that we can pray properly and keep the masjid open and running properly. Even if there are some people that can't attend the masjid anymore, the greater benefit is to keep the masjid open and running properly. Especially, again, at the beginning of COVID, where some people were still very scared, not knowing what COVID is and how COVID is, etc. Some people tried to bring up a lot of those topics. Some people want us, for example, stop Jum'ah, etc., etc., etc. Unless you're forced by the government. It's a different story. But when you had the ability to close the masjid voluntarily, this was a problem. But some people wanted it because certain people might be affected much worse. But these certain people will say, okay, you guys stay home because it may be a harm on you, but the majority stays praying because inshallah it's not going to harm them. So they didn't get to come to Jumu'ah because they didn't feel safe, but you can't, for the minority, stop the majority from being assisted. This rule is very important in our time because we live in a time in a society which builds this philosophy of liberalism. And liberalism, it's all about the individual. So they'll tell you, for example, you do what makes you happy. In the Sharia, no. مصلحة الجماعة تقدم على مصلحة الفرد. The benefit of the Jama'ah, the majority of people, is given precedence over the benefit of the individual. So like, we wouldn't allow in Sharia, like a person, like a drag queen to walk down the street. We wouldn't allow that. That would be illegal in Sharia. Why? Because even though they say, okay, this is my creativity and me expressing myself, yeah, but it's not nice. You're scaring the kids, it's inappropriate, you're a man acting like a woman, etc., etc., etc. This would not be allowed to be promoted in Sharia. Now, so they would be stopped from expressing themselves. Whereas in Australia, it's something protected and promoted because it's all about the individual. The individual is what you have. You can wear a thobe and taqiyya, sunnah cap. They can wear like a turban, the Sikhs. The Buddhist monk can wear his robes. The priest can wear what he wears. The nun can wear what she wants. The drag queen can wear the drag queen. Whatever you do want as an individual, you're allowed. But that's not allowed in the Sharia. Jayid Shabab. This is a very important rule. الضرر لا ضرر ولا ضرار. No harm done, no harm caused. This is especially important when it comes to resolving issues. When you want to go and resolve issues, because it happens a lot with his family, friends, business, whatever it may be. Always keep this in mind. Okay? No harm done, no harm caused. Someone has done something bad to your sister and you want them to get divorced, that's the best thing. You don't say, I'm going to take him to the cleaners, for example. They get divorced, okay, she gets her mahar, she gets the rights of the kids, but you don't say, and I want half the house, and I want this, and I want that, and I'm going to take him to court. That's not allowed. Okay? Why? Because now you're causing harm. if someone, his wife wants a divorce. Why? Because he's not giving her rights. So he says, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to make you hate me until you go to the sheikh and you say, khalas, I'll leave without anything. That's also not allowed because you're causing her harm. If you're the reason for the divorce, yani. Divorce and give her rights. Jayyid. When it comes to your own kids, they're your own kids, but are you allowed to abuse them? Wallah, hada ibni, and you smack him on the face, etc. It's not allowed because you're causing him harm. Jayyid, you're not allowed to cause harm. Let's say your child's older. And most of you, mashallah, are young. But let's say when you get older, or sometimes a parent, he's like, 50 years old, 60 years old, mashallah, his son has a little bit of money. So he says to his son, I want and I want and I want. And it means that the son is struggling now. The son wants to get married, for example, but the dad wants to keep taking money because he wants to fly business class to Lebanon. And so the son can't get married. So now the father is causing the son harm. It's not allowed because the son needs to get married, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So anything that's causing harm, the Sharia did not intend or not allow, it's not allowed to happen. Okay, these are very important points. A lot of it will come up in your lessons and talks, inshallah, in life. Yani. Some things that we were meant to mention, which we forgot from last week from the intention, we'll try and go through them as quick as possible, inshallah. Regarding intention, number one, if a person does a haram and says, I done it with good intention, does that mean he doesn't get sinned? No. What about إنما الأعمال بالنيات?
He's committing haram.
إنما الأعمال بالنيات.
So how can you do zina by mistake?
No, I done it because I was stressed out.
You sleep in
I done it because I was stressed out. Why? I don't want to divorce my wife. I want to do it just so I
talking the car up shit.
talking the car. إنما العمل بالنيات is for the mubah. That which is allowed, this is where the intention counts. When it's haram, the intention doesn't count except in very rare instances. Okay? The general rule is if you swear because you are angry, doesn't mean anything. If you listen to music for a good intention, doesn't mean anything. If you commit a haram, it doesn't matter what your intention was. That's the general rule. Okay? If a person intends something in his heart but doesn't act upon it. Let's say a person, he had a fight with his wife. And in his heart, he's saying, you know what? Wallah, I wish I could divorce her. You know what? I want to divorce her right now. So he's talking to himself, he's intending in his heart, I would love to divorce her. I want to divorce her. Or even says in his mind, she's divorced. In his mind. But he didn't actually say it. Do you get judged what you intend? No. Inside you say, Allah, I want to light that person on fire. I want to see him being tortured and screamed. And. You don't get judged on it. I don't recommend you start having those thoughts because it may lead to in the future some action. But the general rule is if a person has it internally, he doesn't get judged for it. When is the intention considered acceptable? When the action is also correct, as we mentioned. And these are the two conditions for any act of worship to be accepted. The action needs to be correct, according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, with the right intention there. Okay, some people, for example, they say, how can you say reading Quran on the dead is bid'ah? It's just, and it's sinful, and it's bid'ah means haram. They say, how can reading Quran be haram? We say the action needs to be correct. Can you read Quran in sujood? No. If you read Quran on sujood on purpose, then your salah is broken. It's not the right place to read Quran. Okay, even though you're in a ibadah, but it's in this Quran in the salah, but it's not the place for it. So the act has to be correct, then the intention follows. The intention has to be correct, then the act becomes a condition for it. If a person wants to get rewarded for his intention, okay, and this is the last point from the intentions, if you intended to do something good, but you were unable to do it, you get rewarded. Okay? If you intended something good, but you were unable to do it, this is when you get rewarded. Example, you're coming to pray Isha, you went to leave your house, you went to turn on your car, your battery is dead. You had no way to charge your car, so you couldn't come to Salat al-Isha, you still get rewarded for it. If you go to do bad, but you can't do it, you don't get rewarded. Okay, if you go to do bad, you stop yourself, then you get rewarded for it. But if you weren't able to do the haram, but you took steps to do the haram, you still get sinned. Okay? Let's say a person, he went to rob a bank, but on his way he had a dead battery and so he couldn't do it. Does he still get sinned? Yes, he still gets sinned because he actually acted upon the intention of doing bad. Okay? So if a person doesn't act upon it at all, I would love to light that person on fire, but I didn't do it. Okay? I don't get sinned. Even though I did something bad, but I didn't do it, I don't get sinned. But if I went to the petrol station to buy the petrol, but they ran out and that's why I didn't light him on fire, then of course I get sinned because I took actions towards doing haram to that person. But if a person intended good and couldn't do it because he wanted to but he was out of his control, then he gets rewarded for that. هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله عليه وسلم محمد وعلى آله محمد وصحبه أجمعين.